Good night, the good people of St. Lucie and wider Barbados, and a special welcome, of course, to the people from St. James North, constituency to which I owe my present political and my future political history. I am honored here tonight to speak for a few minutes on behalf of one of the most committed politicians who I've met since I've come into politics. In fact, I knew Peter long time before I came into politics. His father and my father, both stalwarts of the Barbados Labour Party, were good friends. And I believe I met Peter's father first as a teenager on a Saturday afternoon watching cricket, because I used to go and watch cricket with my dad, and Peter's father used to be there watching Spartan. Peter comes from tremendous stock. He is someone with the passion for people. He has stuck with the people of St. Lucie, although he has not been successful on 2 occasions. But each of those occasions, he's come closer to delivering this seat and to becoming member of parliament. It is now, last election, down to 400 votes. Those 400 votes must disappear on election night, and Peter Phillips must be elected as the duly elected representative of the most northern parish of this island. Peter must be in Parliament walking up the stairs with the rest of the St. Lucie team, the rest of the Northern Zone team of the Barbados Labour Party. St. Lucie was the only seat in the Northern Zone that we did not win. That must be reversed in the next election. Peter has stuck with the people. He has been the longest serving parish independence chairman in all the 11 parishes. And St. Lucie has won, as you know, the parish independence competition for the last 4 or 5 years. And leadership must count for part of that reason. The same way how lack of leadership has counted for where Barbados is today in terms of our socio-economic decline. Compare that now with the present representative of St. Lucie. This is a man who has been in Parliament now for nearly a quarter of a century. What does he have to show for that long stint in Parliament? What serious initiative or legislation has he piloted to better the lives of the people of St. Lucie or the lives of wider Barbados? None whatsoever in 20 years. In fact, he's an embarrassment to the people of St. Lucie, an absolute embarrassment to the Parliament of Barbados. When someone can get on brass tacks and call in radio programs every day talking a bunch of foolishness all the time, whether it is that 20% is greater than 80%, or whether it's getting on Facebook with a shirt off and drinking water and talking about the water clean. And the Americans last week tell you that that ain't so. Whether it is telling Barbadians to take the money out of Sagicor, one of the leading, not only Barbadian companies, but regional companies, a company that has branches in America, in England, international company, of which Barbados should be proud, a company that, in fact, has lent the government of Barbados money to pay salaries. And he gets and talks about Barbadians should take the money out of Sagicor just because Sagicor moved one of its subsidiaries out of Barbados as headquarters because of the 21 successive economic downgrades brought about by the mismanagement and incompetence of a government, of an administration of which he is part. And the head of Sagicor having to call in on the radio program immediately and saying that he will be writing the Prime Minister about this representative. What madness is he talking? A company that has buttressed the government of Barbados. But that doesn't surprise me, because you know, you are free to disagree with someone. Children disagree with their parents, brothers disagree with their siblings. We all choose to disagree, but you should be able to follow the logic of someone's argument even though you disagree with them. And for the life of me, I cannot follow the logic of this man's arguments or contentions. They're so illogical, they make absolutely no sense to anyone of human nature. What has he stood for in his 25 years almost as a parliamentary representative? To enter politics, to be a politician, I contend that you must stand for something. You must feel that you can shed blood and die for something. People with disabilities, I will die for them. I stand for that. Not only now, for 25 years, I've been fighting the cause for the advancement of people with disabilities. He should be fighting that too, because disabilities is close to him. But he doesn't do that. Never did that yet. He has been a failure as a minister. Failure, complete failure as a minister of housing. The staff of the National Housing Corporation being cut in almost half. Almost 50% of people dismissed from the National Housing Corporation, with him presiding as minister in 2014. He has failed as minister to construct from start to finish 50 houses in his 5 years as minister. You can't count 50. In fact, 50 is too many. When I said so in Parliament 2 years ago, he in fact said there weren't even 25. Houses that I pass every day in Lancaster, rainbow houses, took about 3 years for people to move in after they were completed. Houses up at Dodds, just past Dodds, people still can't get in them. He minister, but yet on calling programs every day. When he not on calling programs, he at Moontown. He has benefited financially from being in Parliament, Minister of Government, but he looking after Moontown. He ain't looking after the cause of the people who he's been elected to serve, or the people of Barbados of whom he is a minister. It is ridiculous, and we cannot stand for this. He has been possibly the staunchest supporter and defender of the Democratic Labour Party's failed policies. He is the person, the Dems minister or whoever presents the bill whenever Parliament meets or lays the resolution. Whoever replying for us follows, and then he gets up to speak, the staunchest defender of failed policies of the Democratic Labour Party that has brought you, the people of Barbados, into a serious state of livelihood, a decline in your living prospects. The worst that Barbados has been economically and socially since independence. And he's the consistent defender of that. He's the person, he was the main person on radio defending the restoration or return of salaries, I call it, increase in salaries. Because they got 10% more this month than they had the month before. So an increase in a salary, and he was the main person on the government side defending that, taking back the 10%, moving the salary up from $180,000, which they said they could not live on, to $200,000. While 4,000 people were laid off by their policies, while the unemployment rate in Barbados continues to be in high double digits, but yet they take back their 10%, and then he calls on the union to put the people before the self, when he and his cabinet colleagues put themselves before the people of Barbados. Because the public servants haven't got a salary increase now for 9 years. But they don't care about that. They're all for themselves. Don't mince words. Don't mind the rhetoric. The Democratic Labour Party does not care about you, your mother, your son, nor your grandmother. Don't get tied up about that. But this is a man. This is a man who is always talking. Whether, as I said, on call-in programs or Parliament, you can't understand his logic. And it reminds me of Plato, one of the great philosophers of the world, who said, wise men speak because they have something to say, but fools speak because they have to say something. The late Prime Minister David Thompson was absolutely correct on this point. He said that the present representative for St. Lucie could never see the inside of a cabinet room once he was Prime Minister, and he was absolutely correct on that point. He refused to put that man in a cabinet over which he presided. He sent him to do a fishing agreement with Trinidad. He couldn't do nothing about that neither. Thompson up dead, and he find himself submerged to the top in a cabinet of Barbados. And you paying him $200,000 a year plus per diem every time he travels, $200 US a day, to do nothing, to work at Moontown and to call in on radio defending the Democratic Labour Party. That is where we come to in this country right now. This election is going to be a critical election to the future of Barbados. The soul of Barbados depends on this. We have on the one side a party that has been the government for over 10 years now, that has presided over 21 successive economic downgrades, that has presided over a dire fall in the foreign exchange earnings of Barbados, in manufacturing, in agriculture, that has presided over total decline in foreign reserves in Barbados, where they're now below 6 weeks' worth of foreign reserves in Barbados compared to when they were 2.7 billion or 6 months' worth under the Barbados Labour Party. It is serious decline in social welfare protection of the poor and vulnerable people in this country, including people with disabilities, a continuous deterioration in the roads in Barbados, including the roads in St. Lucie, even though that representative happens to be a minister who could do something about it, in charge of rural development, a serious decline in garbage collection, such that 15 months ago I had to write the Minister for Sanitation and saying, look, garbage in 5 northern parishes being collected 3 weeks, once every 3 weeks in many cases. A government that has placed user fees on prescriptive drugs. You imagine that? That poor people and old people have to buy. A government that imposed tuition fees on university students. Something that was previously regarded as a sacred right of Barbadians for a half of a century, and you put tuition fees, you impose tuition fees, $10,000 a year, in many cases, on poor working class Barbadians, because 80% traditionally of the people, Barbadians who attended the University of the West Indies over the last 20 years were from poor working class conditions. And therefore, almost 40% of the university students had to drop out of university or couldn't attend university where they had every intention of attending. And only 1 year's notice of that. I mean, this is criminal, in fact, that people, some of your children with 1 year to go at university had to drop out because they couldn't finance their tuition. We went back into the 1950s, and a government that failed to allow bursaries, which they spoke about, to come into force, or to allow the scholarships to come into force. This is a government that does not care about the people of Barbados. It has presided over an educational system that annually results in over 40% of children leaving secondary school without any certification or any skills to allow them to enter the world of work. So people in their late 20s, never having worked in their lifetime, never having that discipline, and they feel good and they come to you telling you that they should be re-elected Another 5 years after 10 years of sufferation? No way. And continuing to blame an international economic recession that stopped about 5 years ago. Most countries in the world, including in the Caribbean, showing economic growth. Grenada, for instance, showing economic growth of 4% last year. And most of the years of the Democratic Labour Party rule, in fact, not only this time, but in the 1991-94 era as well, the economy showing negative growth or barely any growth at all, when you need 3% economic growth to make any real difference in terms of a country's development. And all of this is what the representative for St. Lucie has supported throughout these 10 years of Democratic Labour Party mismanagement. He has supported the passage of 40 new taxes or increase in taxes. And you all know them. I don't have to recite any of them. 40 new taxes or increase in taxes, whether it is VAT, NSRL, municipal solid waste tax, all of those taxes. And he is one of the main supporters of them, taking money out of your pocket without you getting an increase in salary and a cost of living increasing by 40% during that time. This government has collected more taxes than any other government in the history of Barbados. $25 billion in taxes in the 10 years it has been in office. And this is a government that is so callous, so arrogant. We have had, as Colin said, water outages in 5 parishes, including in St. Lucie, 2 years ago. And the minister in charge of water resources, the Prime Minister, not visiting any of those parishes to empathize with the people. We've had a sewerage crisis going on as we speak, and hardly any word from the minister in charge of water resources. A bare umph from the Prime Minister last week. And Lee Kuan Yew, one of the leading political leaders in the last century, spoke about a good government is a government which is honest, which is effective, which is efficient in protecting its people and in allowing opportunities for all to advance themselves. This Democratic Labour Party government has failed in all the categories. The Barbados Labour Party, on the other hand, plans to remove tuition fees imposed on university students. We plan to remove the iniquitous NSRL tax. We plan to implement integrity and prevention of corruption legislation. We have a draft published already asking for your comments. The Democratic Labour Party never intended, in spite of its promises, to implement anti-corruption or integrity legislation. The Prime Minister, in fact, said that the present 1929 Act is good enough for Barbados. The Attorney General said that people who call in for anti-corruption and integrity legislation are making stupid noises. But we understand that corrupt practices are a serious indictment on a country, a serious problem. We have fallen on the Transparency International Corruption Perceptions Index. 4 places from 2012 to 2016. Sorry, we have fallen 16 places from 15 to 31 in 4 years between 2012 and 2016 under this government. This represents corruption, a serious problem and a serious obstacle on the socio-economic development of our people. But keep hope alive, people, because we have Mia Amor Motley leading us. No one has come to you with more experience, with more training, with more knowledge, with more background than Mia Amor Motley to be Prime Minister of Barbados. She's been Deputy Prime Minister of Barbados for 5 years. She's been a Member of Parliament for 27 years. She's been a Minister of Government, major ministries, education, economic development, Attorney General for 14 years. see no one out of the 30 of us, indeed no one presenting themselves as candidates in this election, are better able to articulate and to implement a sound vision for the future development of this country over the next 10 years than mere Amor Motley. She has behind her a top team, in my opinion, the best 30 candidates, the best team of candidates ever to present themselves to the people of Barbados for election as your servants is this Barbados Labour Party team. But you have to help us. We will help you. But you need to help us by going and vote in your numbers. We need this seat. We must have this seat. We need Peter Phillips with us, someone with integrity, commitment, passion, someone who understands the banking system, the financial system. We need Peter. He will be an asset to the government of Barbados, and we need all hands on deck. This is going to be challenging times. We need your support. I thank you.
One day coming soon, and I can see it on the horizon when I go up to the church and I